The email came at 11:42 p.m. Congratulations, it read, a partial scholarship, enough to make college real, but not enough to make it possible without the rest of the money my parents had promised for years. Before I could finish reading, Mom's text appeared. Sorry, sweetheart, we have to be practical, your sister's wedding comes first. No emoji, no hesitation, just final. I stared at the screen, the light from my laptop turning everything pale blue. My scholarship letter glowed beside her message, 2 versions of my future, one earned, one erased. On the desk sat a small silver keychain shaped like a house. Mom had given it to me when she opened that college fund, saying, "For your dorm one day." Back then, it meant freedom. Now it felt like a lock. I didn't reply. I just held the keychain until the metal warmed in my hand. I thought sacrifice was love until I realized it was currency. If you've ever been made to feel guilty for asking the bare minimum, hit like and subscribe. What happened next changed everything. I always find it fascinating to read which cities and countries you're listening from, so don't hesitate to write a comment. Now, get comfortable. Happy listening. Family is everything. That was the anthem in our house. It hung over the dinner table like a rule you couldn't see but always felt. If love had a job description, mine read, "Be the strong one." Mom used to touch my shoulder and say, "In this family, the strong one gives more." She said it like a blessing. It functioned like a sentence. When Emma cried, Mom called her sensitive, precious, delicate. When I cried, Mom tilted her head. "You're being dramatic, sweetheart. You know better." I learned fast that tears were wasteful, that silence worked better than pleading ever could. At 10, I slid my birthday money across the table so Emma could buy dance shoes. It wasn't asked for. It was expected, wrapped in a smile, lacquered with praise. At 12, the class trip to DC came up short. Dad sighed. "You understand we can't afford 2 girls going." I said it was fine. It always had to be fine. Fine became a language. Fine was how I swallowed things too big to name. 16 arrived with a hush. Dad's job disappeared. Bills arrived like weather. Mom called it a rough patch, like we could outwalk a storm. Emma stayed in private school because routine helps her thrive. I dropped my art class, picked up weekend shifts at the grocery store, and learned the art of making minimum wage look like faith. When the power bill got paid, Mom hugged Emma and said, "See, things work out." No one asked how the light stayed on. Invisible labor has a sound, quiet keys in a door at midnight, receipts rustling in a pocket, the soft click of your own needs shutting down. We kept moving. Emma got the bigger room because natural light lifts her mood. She got a newer phone because social connections are important at her age. I got a nod, a list, and the word responsible pressed into me like a fingerprint. Mom called it trust, Dad called it maturity. It was neither. It was a siphon. Whenever I asked for something small, a night off, a ride, a sliver of help, Mom's voice softened into a tone that made guilt feel like mercy. "Sweetheart, you're lucky you don't need as much as Emma. She's different." Different became a halo over Emma's head and a ceiling over mine. Different meant deserving. My worth was measured in how little I cost them. The first gaslights were small, not explosions, adjustments. I'd say, "That hurt," and Mom would smile sadly. "You're reading it wrong. We do everything for you." She said it with such certainty I began to doubt my own senses. Maybe I was ungrateful. Maybe strength did mean disappearing well. At a family barbecue, Mom beamed as she described Emma's wedding dress, the boutique, the beadwork, the hand-stitched veil. An aunt asked about me. Mom waved it away gently. "Claire's simple. She doesn't need all that." The sentence landed like a dull blade. No blood, just bruising. The women patted my hand. "Lucky you," they said. Imagine needing so little. That night, alone in my room, I held the small silver keychain shaped like a house, Mom's gift from years ago. "For your dorm one day," she'd said, laughing. I turned it over in my palm until the edges warmed. A promise can feel exactly like a lock. The summer before graduation, Dad called a family meeting. He looked proud, almost ceremonial, as he placed a folder on the table. "We've been saving since the day you were born," he said. $100,000 for your education, or your first business. You've earned it." Mom added softly, "See, we never forgot about you." For the first time in years, I believed them. That night, I sat on my bed holding the folder like it was proof that loyalty wasn't wasted, that all those nights working double shifts, staying quiet, being the strong one, had finally meant something. When I left for college, Mom hugged me a little too tight. "Just remember," she whispered, "your sister looks up to you. You're her example." I carried those words like a badge and a burden. In my first semester, things seemed fine. The tuition was paid, the account still existed. Then, small cracks appeared. Emma's texts got more frequent questions about credit cards, deposits, tiny loans. By Christmas, I noticed the balance had dipped to $76,000. I called home. Mom sighed. "Don't worry, honey. We just borrowed a little for Emma's engagement. You'll get it back." The word borrowed echoed long after the call ended. By spring, it was $54,000. Then, $38,000. Each time I asked, I became the problem. "Why are you suddenly so focused on money?" Mom said. "You're better than that. You should be proud we're using it for family," Dad added. "We're all investing in each other." Investing. That was their word for erasing me politely. When I tried to push back, Mom smiled, that careful smile that always made me feel childish for wanting fairness. "You've always been so independent, Claire. Why change now?" So I didn't. I stopped asking questions, stopped checking the account, stopped hoping that fairness was still a family value. I focused on classes, work, anything that didn't require permission. My phone filled with Emma's wedding updates, floral mood boards, gold invitations, captions that read "family first, always." And through all of it, I kept pretending I wasn't the one paying for her happiness. Then came the email, the scholarship I'd worked years for. For once, something felt right. I opened it with trembling hands, ready to forward it to Mom and Dad. But before I could, her text appeared. "Sorry, sweetheart. We have to be practical. Your sister's wedding comes first." The words didn't hurt the way I expected. They landed clean, surgical, precise enough to end hope. That night, I stared at the empty folder on my desk, the same one Dad had once called an investment in you. It hit me then. They hadn't stolen my dream. I had given it to them, thinking it was love. The week after Mom's text, I went numb. There was no screaming, no begging, just silence so sharp it felt like glass under my skin. I signed the student loan papers, watched the debt total climb, and whispered, "Fine." Fine, the word I'd been trained to live by. Days blurred into late shifts at a downtown cafe. I made lattes for lawyers, professors, people whose parents showed up with care packages instead of invoices. At night, I studied under flickering fluorescent lights, my fingers sticky from spilled milk and exhaustion. Sometimes, I'd scroll through social media between shifts. Emma in her new house, wrapped in white ribbons and champagne smiles. In one post, she wrote, "Mom always said Claire's the strong one. I'm lucky I never had to be." The comments flooded in. "Sister goals, such a supportive family." I didn't react. I just stared until the screen dimmed. Something inside me bent until it didn't bend anymore. One afternoon, Emma stopped by the cafe. She ordered an iced caramel latte, smiling like nothing had ever been broken. "Mom said you're still working here? That's so humble of you," she said, tapping her manicured nails on the counter. "You never cared about material stuff anyway. You're the practical one." She meant it as a compliment. It landed like pity. I smiled back, polite, neutral, deadly calm. "Enjoy your drink." That night, I walked home in the rain, the city lights smeared across wet pavement. For years, I thought being strong meant endurance. That night, I realized it meant strategy. When pain finally ran out of places to hide, it turned into clarity. A few weeks later, I met Dr. Levin, a visiting finance professor who ran a mentorship program. He asked why I looked at numbers like they were people. I told him, "Because they never lie." He laughed once, quietly. "Pain is data," he said. "Learn to invest it." Those words hit deeper than any comfort I'd ever received. I joined his research group. Days turned into late nights running analytics for small investment portfolios. For the first time, control didn't feel like arrogance, it felt like oxygen. Money stopped being the thing they used to hurt me. It became the tool I'd use to make sure no one else ever felt that helpless again. The internship Dr. Levin recommended was at a small, private firm, glass walls, steady hum of ambition, and not a trace of pity anywhere. I loved it instantly. At first, I fetched coffee and fixed the printer, but I watched everything. The way traders talked about leverage like chess players talked about risk, the way confidence could turn numbers into power. I started staying late, teaching myself to read the market, the way my family used to read emotions, looking for patterns, weakness, opportunity. Each paycheck felt like revenge disguised as growth. I opened a savings account and named it Freedom Fund. Every time I deposited money, I thought about that old folder labeled Claire's Fund and smiled not bitterly, but with precision. Within a year, I was promoted to junior analyst. I stopped calling home. Mom texted now and then, small, tidy messages. Emma's housewarming was perfect. Dad says hi. I never replied. Silence, I'd learned, was its own language. By 27, I'd built enough capital to start consulting for small startups, mostly women-led, underfunded, underestimated, the kind of people who reminded me of who I used to be. One evening, while reviewing client files, I came across an address that made my stomach freeze. Emma's Street. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I saw the report. Foreclosure pending, mortgage defaulted. 90 days left. I read it twice, slowly, the same way I had read Mom's message years ago. The next morning, my phone rang. Unknown number. Mom's voice cracked on the line. Claire, we need help. It's Emma's house. Her husband's business collapsed. We're drowning. The bank's taking everything. For a second, I didn't feel triumph. I felt nothing. Just the stillness that comes before a decision. I'll take care of it, I said. My tone was even, almost gentle. She cried in relief. I knew you'd understand. But what she didn't understand was this. I wasn't saving them. I was closing the circle. That night, I called my attorney. Within 48 hours, the house was quietly purchased under the name of my foundation, Key Start Financial Initiative. The same house my parents had chosen over my education now belonged to me. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. Because the best revenge isn't rage. It's patience dressed as mercy. 2 weeks later, Mom called again. Her voice had that mix of guilt and entitlement I'd memorized from childhood. Sweetheart, the bank says someone bought the property. We're praying it's an investor who'll let Emma keep the house. Maybe you could talk to them? You're in finance, right? I almost smiled. I'll see what I can do. The following Sunday, I drove to the suburbs, the same street where they'd once thrown Emma's engagement party. The banners were gone, the roses wilted, but the porch still looked like a picture from a dream I'd never been invited to. Mom answered the door. Her makeup couldn't hide the exhaustion. Claire, she breathed, like my name was both surprise and lifeline. You came. Dad stood behind her, quieter than usual. Emma sat on the couch, eyes swollen, wedding ring still gleaming. I set a folder on the table, loan agreements, title transfer, payment schedules. My voice didn't shake. I'm here on behalf of Key Start Financial Initiative, the new owner of this property. Silence. Only the clock ticking. Mom blinked, confused. Key Start, that's your company? Yes, I said simply. And this house will serve as its first women's financial literacy center. Emma's face crumpled. You're turning my home into a classroom? No, I said softly. I'm turning it into freedom. For girls who were told to give up their futures for someone else's comfort. Dad's jaw tightened. You think this is justice? I think it's balance, I said. Mom sank into a chair, her hand trembling over the armrest. We did our best. I know, I replied. And I finally did mine. No shouting, no tears, just the clean sound of paper sliding across wood as I left the signed documents on the table. Outside, the evening sun spilled through the trees, glinting off the same silver keychain that now hung from my car keys, the one that once promised a dorm room, now unlocking something much bigger. As I drove away, I didn't feel triumph or revenge. I felt quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when you stop bleeding for people who call it love. The news broke 3 days later. Finance expert Claire Monroe transforms family estate into women's debt management hub. Headlines spread faster than I expected. Pictures of the house now painted soft cream, with a new glass sign reading Key Start Center flooded social media. Comments rolled in. Beautiful mission. Finally, someone using wealth for good. No one knew the story behind it, not yet. But Mom did. Emma did. That evening, Mom called again. I let it ring twice before answering. Her voice was smaller this time, fragile in a way I'd never heard. I saw the article. You really turned the house into that? Yes. You didn't have to humiliate us. I took a slow breath. Mom, I didn't build it to humiliate anyone. I built it so no one else grows up thinking silence is loyalty. She hesitated. We just wanted what's best for the family. I almost laughed, not cruelly, just tired. You used that sentence every time you took something from me. There was no reply, only the faint sound of her breathing. I'm not angry, I said finally. I just stopped participating. When the call ended, I felt something shift, not victory, not closure, but distance. Clean, necessary distance. The next morning, a delivery arrived at the new center. A small velvet box, no note. Inside was the same silver keychain Mom had once given me, the edges worn, the metal cool against my palm. For a moment, I just stared at it. The symbol that once meant belonging now felt like release. I hung it by the entrance door, beneath a brass plaque that read, "They used money to build walls. We use knowledge to build doors." That weekend, the center opened its doors to the first group of young women students, single mothers, survivors of financial abuse. Some came in trembling, others defiant. I recognized all of them, because in some way, I had been all of them. When the session ended, one girl lingered near the door. "Is it true this used to be your family's house?" I nodded. "Wasn't that hard?" I smiled, gentle but steady. Not as hard as staying silent. She nodded once, the kind of understanding that doesn't need words, and left. I looked around the room, the light, the calm, the sound of quiet that didn't ache anymore. This wasn't revenge. It was reallocation turning pain into equity. The house that once symbolized loss now breathed with purpose. And for the first time, it felt like home. Evening settled over the city like a soft curtain. Inside the glass-fronted center, the last traces of sunlight spilled across the floor, warm, steady, unhurried. I moved through the quiet halls, checking rooms one by one. Whiteboards filled with notes, coffee mugs half empty, laughter still faint in the air. The building had a heartbeat now, not of debt, but of second chances. By the main door hung the old silver keychain. I touched it as I turned off the lights. The metal was cool against my skin, a reminder of what it once symbolized, a promise that belonged to someone else. Now, it was mine. Entirely. Outside, the air was calm, the kind that carries peace instead of apology. I locked the door, the soft click echoing like punctuation at the end of a long, chaotic sentence. From the street, the house no longer looked like Emma's or my parents'. It looked neutral, reclaimed. There was no triumph in me, no bitterness left to feed on, just a strange, grounded stillness. Mom hadn't called again, neither had Emma, and maybe that was for the best. Some stories don't need reconciliation, they just need rest. I walked toward my car, the city lights blinking in the distance. For years, I thought freedom would feel loud fireworks, applause, validation, but it was quiet, almost gentle. Before leaving, I turned once more toward the house, its windows glowing faintly. Voices of women learning to rebuild what the world tried to take from them. "They used money to build walls," I whispered. "I used loss to build doors." And that was enough. If this story struck a chord with you, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. And I always find it fascinating to read which cities and countries you're listening from, so don't hesitate to drop a comment. Now, take a deep breath, let the quiet in, and remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't taking back what you lost, it's building something no one can take from you. Happy listening.